Welcome to the Quiet Warrior Show, where we help top leaders find their pathway to incredible success and a lifetime of happiness. Here is your host, Tom Dutta, the Quiet Warrior.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Quiet Warrior Show. It's Tom Dutta, like butter, and we're here live streaming. Now we got a great guest again to come on today. You know, this show is exploding. We're booked out right through to September, every week in the studio. We're well past 300 episodes now. And I want to say thank you to all of you, because it's because of this audience, international guests and people, that we are growing. Right now we're live streaming. That means we're leveling up to the next generation of broadcasting. Right now we're on LinkedIn, on Facebook, on YouTube, on X, formerly Twitter, and Rumble. If you're on those platforms and you're seeing us, I see a couple of people already are popping in on the studio. You can post a chat. I might see it and put it on the screen. You can ask a question if that helps you out to have some engagement with us. Let me tell you about our first guest. Something pleasant happened. I received this book in the mail from Mr. Neil Wilkie. And back then when I got it, I called him Mr. But guess what? He's now a doctor. The doctor's in the house. And so I'll introduce you and then bring him on the screen. He's in the green room. Dr. Neil Wilkie was born in Scotland, moved to New Forest. He'll tell us what that means in southern Hampshire as a child. He spent many years in business, chartered accountancy, strategy consultancy, directorships, business ownership. And then a change of career in his 50s into psychotherapy, which to me is fascinating. This interest in helping unhappy people become more fulfilled, finding purpose, this segued into relationship work. And after researching and experiencing conventional relationship counseling in the UK, Neil decided there was a need for a different approach, and he set up what's called duo coaching 10 years ago. He's now married to Gwen, or another doctor in the house, Dr. Wilkie, still living in New Forest. He loves walking, cycling, sailing their boat, Moon River, south to the Med, a little bit at a time, whatever that means, we'll find out. So let's put him on the screen here. Welcome to the Quiet Warrior Show, Dr. Wilkie.
Thank you, Tom. Lovely to see you.
That's lovely to see you too. You know, that's the thing about you people in the United Kingdom. You have such wonderful language, lovely, brilliant. I was telling you that I was born in London on a military base. Actually, my dad was in the service before I came to Canada. But where is this forest place? Tell us about that.
Well, it's south of London. It's, just off the coast of the southern Hampshire. It's a large area of forest land, which was set up by William the Conqueror in the 11th century. And it's a beautiful place. But so I've got forest one side and sea the other side. It's a lovely place to be. But it's also nice to travel the world. And you mentioned sailing. So our boat is in southern Brittany at the moment in France, and we're heading slowly southward and see which way the wind takes us. But it's great to have a different way of traveling.
Well, I love that. And, I'm not that I can explain it all the time, but I'm born July 5th, Cancer. And I just know I'm a crab. I need to be by the water. And there's something really soothing to me about being by the water. I mean that. I live in a place called Port Moody, British Columbia, just outside of Vancouver, Canada. And Neil, I go out the door, and in 5 minutes, there's an inlet of water and trails. And I can actually, if you follow that inlet in a boat, it'll take you out to the Pacific Rim, Asia. It's just, it's amazing to be by the water. Well, Neil, are you ready to go into Plato's Garden to have some fun with me?
Absolutely. Let's go on the journey.
Okay. Stand by. We're going to set this up. What would it be like to understand Dr. Neil Wilkie through Plato's Garden? Dr. Neil, welcome to Plato's Garden. Now, you and I know a little bit about Plato's Garden, but for the audience who are watching and listening, I'm going to explain it. Plato was an Athenian philosopher, and back in the day, as they say, he and Aristotle, well, they would be in Plato's Garden and apparently walking and talking, just talking about how the being is, how life is. And so what we're going to do today, Neil, is we're going to explore you through three areas. We call this the influences of context. And a little known fact to the audience, or unknown fact, Neil completed, and I'm working through a doctoral degree now, and Plato's Garden is something we know about. So we're going to be talking about what's called micro, the Neil, the person, macro, which is the global world around Neil as he created his public work. And then, of course, mezzo, which is the sector, wherever he does his work. And we'll learn more about that. So, Neil, I'm going to set it up, and we're just going to tell stories, have some fun together. Your journey from experiencing profound relationship trauma to becoming the relationship expert spans a lifetime of love, loss, and renewal. Let's begin with your own story. What was that moment, that spark that transformed you from a man who had experienced relationship failure into something dedicated to saving others from that same pain?
It happened about 15 years ago, and it was a number of different things. First of all, my relationships. I'd never learned how to have a good relationship, and that came from my parents, who were good people, but love was never shown or mentioned. Praise was never given. It was always a case of, well, you could do better. So from an early age, I just wanted to be loved and didn't feel loved. And I wasn't really aware that was what I was looking for. And, I was taught by society that, when you get older, you get married, you have children, and you're going to be happy.
I've heard that before.
That didn't work for me for a long time. So marriage one was fairly short. I was young. She was even younger. I had no idea how to have a good relationship because I didn't have a model from my parents of a good relationship. So that lasted 3 years. She had lots of affairs. So that came to a very difficult ending. Marriage number two lasted for 22 years. And that was okay. I took on 2 stepchildren, again, at a fairly young age. We adopted 2 children later on, and I was following a career which was about making money and buying things. So, we had lots of things. We had a big house, lots of cars, nice holidays, but I wasn't happy, and I didn't really know why I wasn't happy. There was just something missing inside me. I was seeking external validation, I think, and if I had a big job, big house, then I would get that validation, but it wasn't enough for me. So that marriage started coming to an end when I realized I was deeply unfulfilled and wanted to do something very different. So I sold my businesses and decided I'd retrain as a psychotherapist. And that was a huge shift in terms of the work I was doing. But finally, in my 50s, I found a job that, first of all, I enjoyed, and secondly, found fulfilling because I was making a difference to the people I was working with. And the aha moment for the relationship stuff came then, because my then wife liked buying things from the money I was earning. And we just grew apart. We wanted very different things. So I sampled relationship counseling as it was in the UK and realized that just didn't work for me. So I set up duo coaching. Got divorced.
Let me jump in here and just say some things to what you've told me. First of all, thank you for sharing all that, especially the emotional part. One of the blessings or things about you, Dr. Wilkie, is you're able to be vulnerable and share. I have a piece of paper here, and by the time I'm done with you, it's going to be full of Neil-isms. And so let me talk back at you a bit with you. Everyone, this is storytelling. We're not talking heads here. I love one of the things you said about feeling and being loved. And this is part of my story. I mean, all my life, my father left home when I was 12. He was addicted to alcohol. And when he passed away in 18, he was in AA. But I was estranged for most of my life. And what's interesting what you said is it triggered in my mind that growing up, he left when I was young. And for a long time, when I think about how did my father show love, did he ever say I love you? I couldn't I couldn't experience that. So I went into, as you taught us, I went into corporate North America and became an executive. I became a CEO at age 31. And what I found later is that my old mantra was a quality of life is not a quantity of stuff, which is what you said.
Yeah.
And so that's where I was back 30 years ago in my career. The other thing I wanted to just relate from what you said is this relationship counseling. I think it's a really great thing that people are doing counseling, and but there are many people that I've met who still to this day have challenges and they don't do counseling. So I want to jump back in. We're back still in the micro, your personal story, which is fascinating. Are your mom and dad still with you today, or they?
No, my dad died about 10 years ago. My mother 15 years ago.
Okay, sorry for your loss. Obviously, they must have been great people.
Yeah.
This one, I'm going to call this from tragedy to transformation. So, losing your third wife, Debbie, to a brain tumor, seems to have to be devastating. And how did experiencing profound grief influence your approach to helping others value and fight for their relationships?
It was strange to say, but it was a really important learning experience because I think to be really great at the work I do, I need to be able to empathize with the people I'm working with, and I need to have experienced some of what they might be experiencing. So losing Debbie, I fell in love, and she died 27 months later, which was horrendous.
So sorry.
I was there for her, and if we hadn't got married, she would probably have been very alone. So I was able to give her a lot of love, a lot of support. I've done a lot of work with the brain tumor charity to try and improve the outcomes for people with brain tumors. And it took me to a place which I'd never experienced before, of being a prisoner within the medical field, doing what they believe is the best thing to do. And taking life choices. Do you go for quantity of life or quality of life?
Yeah. That's interesting about what you said about that journey with the tumor and choices. Relating back to that, and you might know this, I might have mentioned it. Neil and I were in the same cohort in our university program, the doctorate, and you just happened to finish the line before I did. I fell on my head in a bathtub in 2018 and had a serious brain injury. And you can see in the back of my studio, there's a replica of a brain there. And what I learned about my own journey there that you triggered in me is it was like that for me. Nobody could understand the path forward. And some of the things that people were telling me to do, like, for example, I had broken vision. Eye doctors were telling me your eyes are just fine. Or some would be saying that you need to take this direction and this path. Mm-hmm. Let me go back to still in your personal story. I find that the word invisible scars. So do you still carry from those experiences invisible scars, or however you want to say? And how do they inform your work with couples in crisis? I've had some people, particularly high-level business leaders, Neil, when I'm coaching, because I do coaching now, that they say that there's a scar, they call it a chip on their shoulder, that actually empowers them or drives them forward. So tell us about your invisible scars and how does that inform your work?
I think I prefer to call it learning rather than the scar.
Sure.
Because, excuse me, when after Debbie had died, I was feeling very sad, sorrowful, missing, wondering what I could have done differently. And I went on a Buddhist retreat for a weekend, and the subject of the retreat was loving yourself. And there were three things I was taught on that weekend. One was I didn't need to grieve any longer because I'd actually been grieving for the 27 months since she was diagnosed with a brain tumor. Secondly, I deserved to have a good life in the future. And thirdly, I deserve to have love in my life again in the future. that just felt like a huge weight lifted from me, and it opened up the world of future possibilities. So yes, the sorrow is still there somewhere, and having lost somebody I loved with no ability to change the outcome, that helps me in my work with people who are suffering from severe illness or have lost somebody. It helps me, excuse me, understand where they are.
Yeah, no, we're going to get into mezzo, which is the work that you're doing in just a moment. I want to bring that book forward. It's interesting because you talk about a sailboat. So the metaphor to me is like the ship sailed together, and so you met your new wife. What strikes me by you that's remarkable is from your story, and everybody got to read his books and learn more about Neil's story, like the resilience. So tell me this: there are some people who go through half of what you went through, who end up in depression, maybe suicidal, maybe they don't see their way to the other side. What's your secret? How did you move yourself through that? Or is that just something through psychotherapy you could explain to us is inherent in some people and not in others?
I think to extend that metaphor, I love sailing, I love storms, and I love sailing through storms to get to a better place. So yeah, there's a feeling that when you're in the middle of the storm, you can't give up. You got to keep on fighting. You got to keep everything together, knowing that it will get better. And it's a journey. It's about learning what you can learn from that journey and taking that forward to help other people as well as yourself.
Yeah. Do you think you learned some of that what you just said through your previous businesses before you got into psychotherapy, to actually value learning and what to do with it?
Maybe not, because I was learning about how to be a better businessman in terms of generating more profit rather than a better human being and having a more fulfilling life and helping other people on their journey through life. So within business, I was doing the wrong thing in the wrong environment, I think.
Interesting. Wow. Let's take a right turn and get into the sector now, where the influences of your work. And everyone, we're in Plato's Garden here with Dr. Neil Wilkie. And there's this book here called The Reset. I'm just gonna mention that it was published in 2019. It's available on Amazon, I think, so people can get it there, right, Neil? Yeah. So I've gone through the book at a high level, and it's an incredible read. Let me just throw something out here. I call this the relationship paradigm. Traditional couples therapy often fails. This is what might be suggested. What fundamental flaws did you identify in conventional approaches that led you to create this completely new framework that you have? And maybe you can just touch on that. It's called duo coaching. And how does that differ from other approaches?
Okay, so the main differences from conventional therapy is one, there's two of us working with a couple, which creates a very different balance and makes sure both feel listened to and understood, and you get two different perspectives. Secondly, the length of the sessions, because traditional therapy, it can just drift on forever. We start by defining the outcome the couple wants, and then we normally work for 6 sessions. And the first session is about 3.5 hours long. Typical therapy, the sessions are 50 minutes.
No.
And do you know where that 50 minutes came from?
No.
It was created by Sigmund Freud, who was obviously the father of psychoanalysis, but he had a weak bladder, so he couldn't last longer than 50 minutes before he needed to go to the toilet. So he said,
that's incredible.
50-minute session. And that has continued ever more. Nobody's really questioned, is 50 minutes enough?
Wow.
My view is not. So our session is long, it's intensive, but it creates a significant move forward in each session. Third difference is we use a range of modalities. Typical therapists just have one modality and that they believe is the best one because that's what they're trained in and supervised in. My view is different people, different situations need different modalities. If your car broke down in the middle of the night by the side of the road and the repairman came out and the only tool he had was a screwdriver, would he be able to fix it? Probably
Yeah,
not.
good. Yeah, for sure. Wow. The first thing that people might be thinking, and maybe it's somewhat controversial to think this way, but is the time of 3.5 hours. Now, that's fascinating to me. And so you're talking to somebody who's done a lot of therapy. Since a brain injury, I did therapy for depression, for PTSD, complex PTSD. I'm actually still working through that from some childhood challenges. But I do a 1 hour session, and I got to be honest with you, I agree. Like at the end of an hour, to me, I still have more. I still want more. I still have, I mean, I'm going to be really transparent with you. I don't do this too often live, but I had a session just last week, and at the end, there was so much that was pouring out of me that was being uncovered, and it just ended. And afterwards, I struggled. And the lady said, she gave me a box breathing and this little exercise to do to sort of change the TV channel. So that thought that started to come up at the end just goes away. It's like, no, I mean, we have more work to do. So tell us more about this. I'm going to ask you another thing here that, what's the relationship paradigm framework in practical terms? Is that the three things you mentioned? Is that the actual?
No, the framework I talked about was geo-coaching, which is what I created about 15 years ago.
I see.
That's the way I work face-to-face with couples.
I see.
The relationship paradigm came on honeymoon in 2017 with my now wife, Gwen. And she's a coach, amongst other skills she's got. And we were in sailing in the Caribbean, and she said, tell me about this book you mentioned you'd like to write. What's it going to be about? And I didn't know, but I thought, is it about me? Is it about my life and business? Oh, maybe it could be about relationships. And she said, tell me, what have you learned from all the couples you've spent time with over the last 15 years? What are the key elements which are wrong in their relationship? And I thought for a while, the sun was shining, the sea was blue, and the 6 elements just came to me. It's about communication, connection, commitment, fun, growth, and trust. And, that was just came to me in a moment. And I thought long about it. I've tested out with clients. Are those the 6 elements which are the most important thing in a good relationship? Yeah. And I've tested out on business people as well. Is that what's relevant in a business environment in terms of relationship? And my view is, yes, it is. So the relationship paradigm is those 6 elements combined together with 3 players. It's you, me, and the us.
Wow. Hey, just curious, the person, your other, I guess tell me if I'm misstating this, the other therapist that works with you, if I was your client, is that your wife, or is it somebody third? Okay.
No,
and yeah.
I work with Maria, who's a counselor. We work together for about 7
I see. Years. And Neil, does gender, I don't mean this in a negative way, but does gender matter? So if it's a male client or female, there's 2 of you, one male, one female. Does it make a difference having both genders as counselors in the room in any way?
It does. I mean, most of our clients are heterosexual couples. We do work with gays as well, but mainly heterosexual. And the men generally find it very reassuring there is a male in the room.
Interesting.
Because only about 16% of counselors in the UK are males. Women find it good to be able to see Maria and I working together and having a very positive relationship. They can almost model themselves. So it's important having 2 different sexes working with a heterosexual couple.
That's interesting to me. I mean, I just thought it was like my brain went on a journey, this thing about if I'm sitting in the room with you, with my wife, and we're watching the 2 of you relating to each other, there's, my brain is learning. It's evoking things. I just want to jump back into something here on my paper, diagnosing disconnection, I call this. So if I'm not mistaken, in the book Reset, everyone here's the book Reset, Dr. Wilkie wrote. In that book, you use characters of Rachel and John to illustrate relationship drift. I like that metaphor. What are the most common patterns you've observed in hundreds of couples you've worked with?
The first is normally communication, where a couple fell in love, they get together, and things come into their life, like children, changes in work, other pressures, and they lose the art of communicating well with each other. Communicating well is about being able to express your feelings and be truly heard. And it can get into a vicious cycle of arguments about stuff, neither feeling able to express what they're really feeling in that moment.
Yeah.
So that's the first part. But
yeah,
connection is the second, where people start to disconnect and drift apart because they're too busy doing other stuff. They're working hard, they're working late, they come back together, and they're sit watching TV or they sit looking at their phones, and they're not really connecting. And intimacy and sex is part of that connection, which often fades away very quickly, and they can't even mention it. I lose count of the couples who come to us. They haven't had sex for years, and they've never actually been able to say to each other, "Hey, we used to have great sex. What happened?" It's just that elephant in the room, which doesn't get talked about.
Well, I can imagine. I'm very visual, so I'm starting to imagine being in that room and seeing this unfold. I said this to my wife years ago, and I think I was at one of my worst states because of the recovery through my depression. And I said, the number one reason you probably would want to go to counseling with me is so you can convince the doctor that there's something wrong with me. And I'm being serious about this. Well, how do you, in that room, when you have these two people that obviously have challenges, relationship challenges, to keep that civility between the two of them, to honor both of them? Like, for example, if one starts picking on the other or cutting the other off, just give me a sense. There must be a lot of skill that you and your partner use, but how do you maintain that for 3.5 hours, or do you see some fights break out?
The starting point in the first session is to get each of them to tell their stories. And in a relationship, there is no reality, there's only perception. And it's really powerful when each partner sits there and listens to their own other partner talking about their perception of their life together as a couple. And I'm making it very clear, this isn't about blame or judgment. This is about understanding. Right. And it doesn't matter whether something is 99% one person's fault or 50%. Every situation is co-created in some way. So they just need to sit there, hear their partner, and understand, maybe for the first time, what really was happening and what was different in their world. And arguments that can sometimes come out, but they also need to be focused on the outcomes they want. And if they start with that position of understanding, if they start with clarity on what each of them wants to achieve, then the sources of arguments will start to dissipate.
Neil, when you're in a 3.5 hour session, do you take breaks? Is there, you just keep going? Okay.
There needs to be space, there needs to be lightness, and I sometimes need to go to the toilet, as do they.
It's like being on your sailboat, just over the side, please.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Okay, let's keep going here. We're in Plato's Garden. We're in Mezzo, the influences of the work that you're doing in the world. I'm going to call this point the phenomenology of relationships. I know a little bit about your doctoral thesis from hearing you in our class once or twice. It explores relationships through a philosophical lens. What surprising insights emerged from viewing human connection through the academic perspectives you researched?
Well, it's fascinating, firstly, to start looking at my own life and what had got me to where I am now. Secondly, to look at the wider context of relationships through the eyes of philosophers, psychologists, poets, artists, musicians, and to realize the importance of improving relationships around the world. It's fundamental to the health of society to have great relationships. And my work beyond the doctorate falls into 5 different areas. The first is about improving relationships with couples. And I want to move from being effectively the lifeboat service to being called out when the ship is sinking, to training people how to navigate their way through relationships. Secondly is about challenging the current orthodoxy of relationship work, because I believe my model of duo coaching and the relationship paradigm has got a lot to offer. So I want to challenge other therapists to say, this is what I do. Would this be of value to you? Consider it, and maybe we can work together to improve it. Third area is about improving relationships in business, because I believe that culture creates success, but that culture is founded on great relationships. And, you know, all the surveys show only about 11% of employees in the UK and probably worldwide are fully engaged at work. You know, the remaining 89% are not engaged. And
that's crazy. That's a crazy number, especially me coming from business. That's crazy.
Yeah, it's a crazy number, and the cost of that is absolutely huge. It's about 240 billion a year in the UK alone.
Wow.
So there's a lot of work to be done there.
Yeah.
Fourthly, education. Who teaches us how to have great relationships? With divorce rates being as high as they are, with many children growing up in broken homes with no male model.
Yeah.
And with increasing disconnection from the real world through people being engaged online with social media, I think there's a huge need to educate children and adolescents in how to have good relationships. And I also want to get the importance of relationships on the agenda for governments.
Yeah, this is really, you took me on a journey in my mind, so I'm going to sort of go there right now and just riff with you. Just want to double check in that everything's okay there. If you seem distracted for a minute, everything's all right?
No, I was just looking at my whiteboard, my list of things to do.
Okay. So, yeah, I'd like to know what's on that whiteboard. Share it with the audience sometime. Listen, going back to the children piece, this is something that's very dear to me. So I spend a lot of time discussing this, and coming from a background of a CEO from industry, working with many leaders, not just working as a fellow leader, but sometimes as a leader of leaders. Blind spots are big in the corporate sector. And all the work I've done over the last 10 years, Neil, especially since having a concussion to deal with, comes back to childhood for me. And one of the unintended consequences of my recovery through depression was discovering the impact of my childhood on my brain in terms of dealing with stressors. So I just want to share this with you and get your insight. I would sit in a room as a business leader, and if somebody was raising their voice or somebody was being assertive, that what I was seeing of the world was very different than what actually was happening. Yeah. And then my actions and behavior would be different. And I met a fella, he did a TED Talk, and this is another short story related to this, who was living in an 8x8 block in what we call the downtown east side here. It's a horrible part of our city. Many cities have it, where there's people who are on drugs, and they're literally staggering all over the streets. They live in that area. They have no life. And this fella overdosed 6 times and was saved by emergency services. He came through the other side through faith. He was in prison and then came out of that. And then he began to go out and talk to people, and he changed his life. He's married now. He has a couple of children. And I sat down with him and I said, what happened? How did you end up on the downtown east side, addicted, almost overdosing 6 times, almost dying 6 times? And he said this to me. He said, I can share this because it's public. He talks about it. He said, I would rather he had punched me in the face than what he said. He went on to tell me that his father, who was an Italian immigrant, used to berate him, call him stupid, say he's never good enough. And so that's what I learned about the power of words and for children. So take us back into that moment you were talking about teaching relationships. How do you, when you're dealing with adults, how do you start to educate them how to be better parents? Is there anything you do?
Yeah, so on that story you told, many of the clients I work with, there is something in their unconscious from their childhood. It may have been their father, mother,
Yeah.
or teachers, which was a seed which was planted, which was saying, you're not lovable, you're not good enough. And that can drive really unhelpful behavior.
Mm.
So to find out what that seed was and to help them deal with it, dissociate from it, and to create a new pattern of behavior is hugely liberating for
I see.
clients I work with. So in terms of young people, they need to understand how to create a relationship, how to understand another person's model of the world, but also to be able to express how they're feeling. And if their father, for example, is telling them never going to be any good, they need to be able to share it with somebody who can help them create a different model from that.
Interesting. Thank you for sharing that. It's so true. So when you're in a room with a husband and wife couple, what's the probability that, say it's me and it's with my wife, and there's something like that thought that goes back to childhood that I've never shared with her because I feel shameful, or does that come out in your model, the duo coaching? Are you able to get to that deep level with each person, or break through any barriers there while they're in the room?
Yes. First of all, we get our couples to do a very deep dive and produce a consultation form, which runs to about 20 pages, which gives a deep insight into their timeline and what's happened in their life.
Oh, so that's done before I come in with you.
That's done before. So we're starting with a flying start. And through our experience and through what we're picking up from the energy in the room, we can generally pick up where there's something not quite right. And then we can start pointing into finding out more about their childhood and what was happening and how they're feeling. And then when necessary, we break out into one-to-one work, and I can dig deeper into the unconscious, because it's important to deal with what's in the unconscious rather than just what is consciously expressed, because that's where the real nuggets of gold lie.
Yeah, that's very insightful. I read somewhere, maybe you have an opinion on this, that the blind spot of a business leader is directly correlated to the success or performance of their business, and the blind spot also is connected to the mental health of the individual. In other words, how they act, what they think, feel, and do.
Yeah.
In fact, all the training in the world in the business sector, I'm realizing this as a teacher of others, you can train on business skills and strategy, but if you don't cover this part, Neil, that's why it's so brilliant. What you're doing is amazing. You were saying that 16% of counselors in the UK are men, and that made me think about vulnerability and how a lot of guys are just like, hey, we got to be tough. We don't talk about our problems. And when I went into my own therapy, I went into group therapy, I noticed that 80% of the room was women. What's up with that? And how do we break that paradigm to get men to really step up and take care of their mental health?
Yeah, I mean, there is a lot of shame associated with it. Mental health is, the hidden disease. But mental health problems are all around us, and they are growing significantly. So it should be the two things that are necessary. First of all, there's the right resources there to deal with mental health problems. And secondly, there is the willingness to be open and vulnerable and say, hey, I'm not feeling okay. I need some help.
Yeah.
And the problem in the UK is the mental health support on the NHS is abysmal. And I question the value of group therapy. Never had it myself, but you've obviously had it, Tom, and I know other people who've had it, and it doesn't seem to work for them because it's regression to the mean, really. And there's danger you just get dragged down into other people's illnesses. Because mental health is very unique to each person. is unique to the context, unique to them, the time, and their past. And I don't think you can deal with that as a group.
I just want to respond to that. I agree with you that I did one-to-one and group, but I did what is that therapy that teaches you how to manage your thoughts? It just escapes me now. Gosh, they basically teach you how to manage your thoughts, how you can change the way your thoughts behave by teaching you skills. And anyway, let me just come to a conclusion on that. When I went into a group room, it was what you said. I was sitting there, and there was a psychiatrist, and then there was a counselor, and they taught us for 2 hours, and then we went away and we had a workbook, and we had to learn cognitive behavioral, CBT. And we had to learn skills and apply. But in the room, Neil, there were 2 or 3 people around me. One was a young woman who just every 15 minutes involuntarily broke out crying. And there's a guy sitting beside me who just lost his wife and had a heart attack. And what I find is I was being traumatized. I was being triggered. And so, yeah, but we won't talk about group therapy because this is important here. Going back to what you said, I want to just throw this out now as we go into macro, which is sort of the global picture around the work you're doing. This is a great conversation, by the way. The epidemic of loneliness, I'm going to call this. So we're seeing record levels of disconnection despite being more connected than ever. Yeah. What broader societal shifts are undermining our ability to form lasting bonds with people?
The problem is social media and access to electronic devices where, I increasingly see younger people spending most of their time on their phone, engaging on TikTok, Facebook, whatever, Instagram. And it's very much a swipe left mentality. If you're starting a relationship, you don't like to just swipe left and find somebody else. And relationships need effort. They need understanding the other person. You cannot have a fully productive and sustainable relationship with somebody online. You need to deal with the ups and downs. You need to be able to understand them, and you need to be able to have conversations. And so often I see young guys meeting up in the street, and they're on their phones. They don't even look or speak to each other. They're just standing in the same physical space, just looking at whatever's on their screen. And I find that frightening because as a society, we're rapidly losing the ability to communicate with each other and to understand feelings.
No, that's fair. Yeah, it had to send me on a journey in my mind again. I remember during my recovery from a concussion, I had to wait tables for a year at a restaurant. A buddy of mine owned the restaurant, and I couldn't, cognitively I was struggling, right? So I could do physical. And I remember I'm going from a business owner, executive pedigree to waiting tables. It was quite a change in my life. Had to deal with it. But this is what would happen. People would come in, it was a tap house where they served 40 kinds of beer and Napolitana pizza out of their wood-fired oven. It's quite the place. You would see the families, a family I remember would come in, husband and wife, and they had 2 young children, maybe age 4 or 5. Yeah. This is the picture, Neil. I would seat them at a table. They would give iPad devices to each of the kids, and the kids would be on that for 2 hours. And the parents were ignoring them, not talking. Yeah. And this is what's wrong with society. And so what advice or how do we break through that with what you're doing in your program with people? How do we try to break through that? Because I think adults are addicted to their phones a lot.
Absolutely. So I say to the couples I work with, the things they have to do. One is to remove electronic devices from their bedroom, because so often they will be watching videos on YouTube or TikTok before they go to sleep. Which is a great sex killer. Secondly, they'll be checking emails as soon as they get up in the morning. So I say all devices must be out of the room. And don't tell me you need your phone as an alarm clock. Buy an alarm clock.
Seems obvious.
Yeah, but they don't even think about it. Secondly, to create space where when they get together in the evening, the whole family, to have a device-free zone. Put the phones away, put them in the drawer, turn them off, out of sight. Eat together, talk together, play games together, do things together. And that, I think, is vital. And that can be really transformative.
Yeah.
Yeah, there is an addiction. It's the easy thing to do. And it's
true.
It's much nicer to have a conversation, to have fun together.
Yeah, my wife and I used to say this. My wife's Italian, so we've been married 32 years. It's my second marriage, so I went through a journey, and she did too. But Neil, we would go out and people watch, because we go to the live theater, we go out and dine. Hopefully when I come to London or you come here, we can have some dinner together. And we would people watch, and we would all say, you watch the older people, and he's looking this way, she's looking that way. They're at the table. They have nothing to say. Yeah. And what we realize is, because I raised two stepchildren, and my own daughter is 27, Neil, that everything in life for parents seems to be, what's my experience, around their kids, sports and, PTA meetings and this and that. And like you said, by the time you're done and you're exhausted, you go to bed, you lose, I think cognitively, I believe that the brain's pathways shut down in terms of how to actually critically think and communicate. So you've given us some wisdom there, which is amazing. As we progress through Plato's Garden with Neil here, I want to throw out another question to you. I call this the culture of disposability. So in an age of dating apps and the next best thing thinking, how do we cultivate patience and resilience needed to stay together for sustainable love? What do you say?
Yeah, that's really important, because the swipe left mentality is, well, I don't like them anymore, I'll just find somebody else.
Yeah.
And yeah, it is, being together with somebody is an important commitment. If you've got children as well, it can create huge collateral damage if you do split up.
Yeah.
But yes, life has become much more transitory and in the moment. And we need to learn that pleasure goes alongside pain. And if you're with the right person, you need to be on that journey together and cope with the ups and downs.
Yeah.
But make sure the ups are as good as they can be, because
sure.
that creates resilience.
Yeah, I was just with somebody this morning before I came to the studio that told me that a friend of theirs had lost his father, and the mom and dad were married for 60 years. So he's going through that grieving now. And I can't imagine being with someone for 60 years and all of a sudden they're gone. Yeah. Do you see, well, I guess you don't, because you see couples. But do you have any advice for people who they're in long-term relationships and all of a sudden one perishes? Is it best to go seek counseling and, do some things?
Maybe, but they need to make sure there is not codependence in their relationship. They need to make sure they have their own life as well as a fulfilling life with their partner, so that, if they've been together for 60 years and one of them dies, then they've actually got friends of their own. They've got things they enjoy doing as well. Because, there are three parties in a relationship. There's the you, the me, the us.
I see.
But yeah, it's tough when you've been together for that long, but it can also create an opportunity to embrace a different sort of life. As I found when I lost Debbie, there are other things out there. You don't have to look backwards all the time. You can accept the fact that the universe took somebody you loved away and embrace other possibilities and see what you can from there.
I have to thank you for that nugget. Everybody come back and listen to this part of the show, because I think there's such wisdom there. I would imagine then that in your practice, when you're counseling couples, that you start this conversation with them like now, because they're going to be together a long time, hopefully. But, if they don't find other interests, that's one of the things I find with men that I've worked with, particularly myself. I was like this. It was like we define ourselves by our work. There's not women, there maybe children. But I know a lot of guys, Neil, after their careers, they have heart attacks, strokes, but there's nothing, they've done nothing beyond themselves to make contribution or make friends or hobbies So this is a good thing. Going back to the reset book, this one here, is there a strategy or two in there that you could just share that people would be able to implement in their lives to improve their relationships?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot there on each of the 6 elements. I mean, you talk about people getting to retirement, and that book there is about John and Rachel. Rachel has become the housewife. John goes out to work. John comes home from work tired. They never really communicate. They don't have fun together. And it's all about the children. And suddenly when the children leave home, what's Rachel's purpose? She's moved from being a mother to living with this guy she doesn't really like anymore. So it's about creating joy every day in their life together, creating that connection, having fun together. And that's fun, just the two of them, not just with the children. So it's about focusing on themselves, them as a couple, and then the wider world, including their children. And it's about tracking how you're doing. And the good thing about the relationship paradigm is the 6 elements: communication, connection, commitment, fun, growth, and trust. And if you have a monthly meeting with your partner and say, how are we doing on each of those 6 elements? What score would you give each of those? Which area should we focus on to improve? You know, that's a very simple look at the dashboard of the relationship. Very simple language to use, and it opens the door to dealing with problems before they come too big.
I like that a lot. Everybody, we're here with Dr. Neil Wilkie, and this is his book, Reset. So those tools, are they in the book, or is it just something that...
Yeah, they're in the book. The website, relationshipparadigm.com, has got extracts from the book. It's also got videos, which we had filmed, of the 2 characters working through.
That's wonderful.
And the resources as well, quizzes and so on. So there's a lot out there to help.
Thank you, Neil. Everyone, Neil, the amount of articles and recognition you've had, man, I follow you, and it's pretty remarkable. So you want to follow this man, you want to get a hold of his stuff. Neil, I am curious about self-care. I've learned this myself, but there's something I've learned called secondary trauma. If I'm off on that, you can tell me. But as a therapist, how do you stay healthy? So, because I remember somewhere you said your clients have access to you quite often, like 24/7 or long windows of time. How do you stay healthy mentally?
First of all, by getting fulfillment from the work I'm doing. You know, in the room, if I see a couple falling back in love again, having drifted apart over many years, that is a magical experience. So a huge amount of positive energy comes from that.
Very cool.
Secondly, by not doing it all the time. If this was what I was doing 7 days a week, I would run out of energy very quickly, because it can be emotionally very intense. So, 10 days a month, we're off sailing. So I can forget about a lot of this.
I love
Being
that.
in a great relationship, having fun together is also really important. And being able to express how I'm feeling and be listened to. So, I've become much more open and vulnerable about my own feelings. And I have great people I can just talk to. And that's a really important source to have.
Boy, I think a lot of people are going to want to call you to say, shape my lifestyle that way. 10 days on a sailboat a month. That's very, I admire you, Neil. I really do. And so now we're going to go into the last part of the journey here, or the last part of the sailing, whatever you call that journey. I'll call this the unwritten chapter. What's next? I'm going to throw something out here. Beyond the paradigms, we'll call this. So with your doctoral work complete and your mission to impact 10 million relationships underway, what frontier in relationship science still calls to you?
Okay, so since I finished my doctorate in January.
And congratulations, by the way.
Thank you. That gave me a list of things I need to do. So I've written 2 books since then.
Wow,
so
congrats.
very prolific. and I'm just talking to publishers about them. So the first book is about helping individuals and couples understanding what happens within the therapy room to try and lift the veil and get people doing therapy sooner before the problems become big. And that's a book called Relationships, A View from the Therapist Chair. So helping them understand what it's like, what I see, what I feel, and what the couples we work with feel. The second book is called Reset, a new paradigm for relationship therapy. And that's about training coaches, counselors, psychoanalysts into adopting some of the ways in which I work to see if they can be more effective in their work.
What was Neil? What was the title of the second book?
It's called it's called Reframe.
Reframe. Okay, gotcha. And these you're talking to publishers, but you anticipate coming out next year, maybe?
Yeah, they should be later this year, both of them.
That's wonderful. Well, you know what? You need to have me on the list to send one. I will do an early review, whatever, but I'd have you back talking about it. That's amazing. I actually think it's brilliant. I never thought of that, but for you to write and share through your eyes what it's like sitting in that chair, that's really insightful, man. It's that's powerful. I'm really impressed with that. And the doctoral, congratulations on the doctoral, because I know the journey and how much work that was for you. Let me just ask you one more thing about the next generation. So what, if you've got these two books, you've done all this work, but when you're done with this world, what do you want it to look like?
I want people to have great relationships where they can express how they feel and be truly listened to. I want them to work for organizations where they feel valued and where, again, they can express how they feel to their colleagues and bosses. I want schools and universities to educate their pupils in relationships, how to have good ones, how to deal with problems. And I want the governments of the world to have relationships as a real priority to focus on, because so much of the dissonance in the world is about bad relationships, and that can have a huge impact if we can improve it and help people understand each other's perceptions.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that. What a vision, everyone. Just come back, listen to this teaching moments from Dr. Neil Wilkie here. I thought about your six criteria and the one about trust. I'm thinking, I know enough about how do you create trust if you've got a bad relationship with someone. That oxytocin, whatever that brain does to create, I like this guy, I want to be around Dr. Neil in a relationship. If you don't have trust, you don't have anything. And it's tough.
Trust is the foundation. And when there's a betrayal in the affair or something, that trust gets shattered.
Yeah, I know this.
Yeah,
I watched, my father was a good man overall when he got through his addiction, but he had multiple affairs. I lived that when I was a kid. Never really understood the impact of that on relationships. And it's crazy. I hope the world, my daughter's 27 and she just got married, but one of the things I've been hearing is that the next generations aren't necessarily wanting to get married and have children. They don't want the same things because I think they've seen the pain of their parents. I don't know what you think about that.
Yeah, but what are they going to be like when they're 40 or 50 in transient relationships with no children?
Well, that's the story I think that we need to tell, right? Is the benefit later in life. Absolutely. Wow. Well, everybody, time to move to wrapping up here with Dr. Neil Wilkie. By the way, what does it feel like to be called doctor? Was it an adjustment?
It felt very strange to begin with. And it still feels nice. I feel, I spent, the research I've done to get my doctorate took 69 years. So there's a lot of investment of my time, 2 years hard work writing my thesis. So I think it's nice to have that badge to have people call me doctor. Still feels a bit unusual, but it feels good.
And it's a more unusual.
You've got that to look forward to, Tom. Not to,
I do. I do, and I know that when I come for graduation, we're talking about Middlesex University in London. Now, I was born 7 miles from that university, believe it or not, never been there. And when I come to graduate, I hope that we can sit down and have some food and talk and get to know you. And that's a perfect segue for the award you're going to be given now. Did you know you were getting an award?
No. Go on.
Okay. The next time I ask you that, you say, yeah, you just told me. So I'm going to put another camera on the screen. And why I said it's a good segue is I think I'm going to give this to you in person when we come down. Have you heard of challenge coins?
No, I haven't, Tom. No.
All right. Well, you'll see in the studio cam, there's a little sleeve that comes with it. These are hand painted, crafted, and minted. They're pretty hefty. But the challenge coin surfaced during the World War I era, Neil. And the practice of carrying a coin was designed specifically for a unit. It was popular with the Army Special Forces. Carrying the coin at all times and presenting it when challenged to prove affiliation with the unit resulted in a number of consequences for those who could not produce a coin. The most popular required the coinless soldier to buy a round of drinks. That practice continues to be popular today. Challenge coins are held by first responders, police organizations, any societies. They become a thing. Some people collect them. So when I started the show, I wanted to have an award for people who have taken their life and turned it into something good and made an impact. I'd say you're the 1%. So this is the front of the coin. It's beautiful. I think again, hand painted and crafted. It's the image of the show. The back of it is actually the hero's journey narrative, which my show is built on, by Joe Campbell, about how we. So congratulations and welcome to the Quiet Warrior Global community. This will be yours. Are you still there, Neil? Oh, you're on mute. You're muted for some. Oh, there we go. Yeah. So congratulations. Welcome to the Quiet Warrior community.
Thank you very much, Tom. I feel honored. Thank you for your time. Good to see you.
Thank you, Neil. So everybody, I'm going to ask Neil to tell you, how can people get a hold of your work and your books and everything?
First of all, have a look at my website, relationshipparadigm.com. That's got articles, blogs, videos, and links to buy the books if you want them on Amazon.
Fantastic. We'll put that in the show notes. So everybody find that true passion and purpose, like you've heard from Dr. Neil Wilkie here, and live the life that you deserve and desire and have the greatest relationships possible. Thank you again, Neil. We'll have you back again to talk further. And we'll see you all on the Quiet Warrior Show, everybody. Thank you, Neil.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you for listening to the Quiet Warrior Show. Create is a motive-based leadership development firm. www.kreat.ca.
Okay, I'm just ending stream now, taking us offline. We're still online.